Have you ever been in a relationship where someone suddenly pulls away and you don't know why? One day they're affectionate, responsive, maybe even loving. The next, they're cold, distant, uninterested. They stop texting as much. They avoid eye contact and they act like you're invisible. If this happens repeatedly and seems to be used as a tactic during conflict or whenever you try to get close, you might be dealing with something called withholding and distancing, two common emotional manipulation tools used by narcissists. In this video, we're going to break down what withholding and distancing really are, why narcissists use them, the psychological effects these behaviors have on you, how they create trauma bonds, and most importantly, how you can recognize it and protect yourself. So let's start with some clear definitions. Withholding is when someone deliberately refuses to give you emotional, physical, or verbal connection. They might withhold affection, communication, support, or even basic responses. This isn't about someone needing space for a few hours to cool off. It's a pattern of denial that's used to punish, manipulate, or gain control. Examples of withholding are not responding to texts or calls when they're upset with you, refusing to talk things through when there's conflict, ignoring your need for affection or reassurance, or acting cold or dismissive on purpose. Distancing is when the narcissist creates emotional or physical space between you without explanation. They might still be physically present, but emotionally, they checked out. Examples of distancing are suddenly becoming cold or detached after a moment of closeness, withdrawing from shared routines or activities, avoiding eye contact or touch, or pulling away right after a vulnerable moment. These tactics are not random, they're intentional, and they can have serious emotional consequences. Narcissists use withholding and distancing because they create power imbalances in a relationship. Here's the psychology behind it. When someone pulls away from you emotionally or physically, your brain interprets it as rejection or even abandonment. Now, most people naturally want to restore the connection, especially if you care deeply about the person. So what do? You try harder. You reach out more, you walk on eggshells, you apologize, even if you didn't do anything wrong. This puts a narcissist in a point of control. You're now chasing their approval, trying to fix something they've broken on purpose, while they sit back and decide whether or not to reward you with connection. That's the goal. It's not about solving problems or growing together. It's about dominating the emotional dynamic. Over time, these behaviors can have serious psychological effects. So let's break down what this can do to you. 1. Self-doubt. You start questioning yourself constantly. Did I do something wrong? Am I too sensitive? Or maybe I deserve this. 2. Anxiety. You're always on edge. You're constantly trying to read the room, decode their moods, and figure out what you did to cause the distance. 3. Emotional dependency. Because they control when you get the love and attention, you start depending on them for emotional relief. When they finally do give you affection, it feels like a reward, even if it's temporary. 4. Low self-worth. You begin to believe that you have to work for love, that your needs are too much, that you're not worthy of consistent connection. This dynamic wears you down eventually. It conditions you to accept emotional neglect as normal and even blame yourself for it. So let's look at the types of withholding a narcissist may use. It's not just about going silent, there are different forms. So we have emotional withholding, where they refuse to give you emotional support, empathy, or encouragement. They may ignore you when you're upset or make you feel bad for expressing your emotions. Physical withholding. They withhold affection, intimacy, or touch, and this can feel especially painful in romantic relationships. Sex withholding. They may withhold sex as a punishment or use it as a reward when you behave how they want. Communication withholding. They stop responding to texts or refuse to talk when there's an issue. They leave you in confusion and silence on purpose. Information withholding. They don't tell you important things. You're left out of decisions or made to feel like an outsider in your own relationship. Validation withholding. They refuse to acknowledge your thoughts, feelings, or perspectives. You never feel heard or understood. When these behaviors repeat over time, they can severely damage your sense of trust, safety, and emotional stability. And here's the key thing to understand. Humans are wired for connection. When someone we love pulls away, our brain sees it as a threat, especially if you grew up with emotional neglect, rejection, or abandonment. We're even more sensitive to this kind of behavior. So when the narcissist withdraws love or attention, it can trigger deep emotional panic. Your nervous system goes into survival mode, and you'll do almost anything to get the connection back, even if it means abandoning your own needs. And that's exactly what they count on. Withholding and distancing are also key ingredients in what's called a trauma bond. And here's how it works. The narcissist pulls away, you panic, you try to reconnect, they finally give you a breadcrumb of affection, you feel relieved, the connection is restored, temporarily. That cycle of rejection and reward creates a powerful emotional loop. It's very similar to addiction. Your brain becomes addicted to the highs and lows. And because the good moments are so rare, you start believing they're more meaningful than they actually are. So you cling to them and you hope for more, even though the overall relationship is harmful. And this trauma bond can make it extremely difficult to leave, even when you know the relationship is toxic. So how do you recognize it and break free? Here are some signs that you're being manipulated through withholding or distancing. You feel like you're constantly chasing their attention. You walk on eggshells to avoid being ignored. They withdraw when you express needs or boundaries. You're always the one apologizing or trying to fix things. You feel anxious when they're silent or emotionally unavailable. You're confused most of the time, and you doubt your perception of reality. So, how do you break free? Name it. The first step is recognizing that this behavior is manipulative, not normal. Withholding is not healthy conflict resolution, it's control. Stop chasing. When someone withholds or distances themselves, don't feed the pattern by begging, pleading, or blaming yourself. Step back, observe instead of reacting. Set boundaries. Decide what you will and won't tolerate. You're allowed to say, if you go silent during conflict, I won't engage. Or, I need open communication to feel safe in this relationship. Reconnect with yourself. You may need to rebuild self-trust. Start listening to your emotions, honor your needs, and validate your feelings. Seek support. Working with a therapist or coach who understands narcissistic abuse can help you rewire your responses and start healing. Healing from emotional withholding and distancing takes time, but it is possible. You'll need to rebuild your sense of safety, learn how to trust your gut again, practice self-care that's grounded in consistency, and surround yourself with people who respond, not disappear. Most importantly, you have to unlearn the idea that love should hurt to be earned. Healthy love is responsive. It shows up, it communicates, it doesn't vanish when things get hard. If you've experienced withholding or distancing from someone you care about, please know this. It's not your fault. You didn't cause their behavior. You didn't deserve the cold shoulder. You don't have to earn love by suffering. Start choosing relationships where communication, affection, and emotional safety are consistent, not conditional. And if that means starting with the relationship you have with yourself, then that's more than enough. So thank you for listening, guys, and I'll talk to you on the next one.